Grime is perhaps the most important British musical movement since Britpop, an electronic music formed from equal parts two-step garage, jungle and hip-hop. When it emerged in the early 2000s, it was exciting, innovative, and entirely the UK's own thing. Grime had existed before Dizzee Rascal, though yet to be named as such, but he was the one that brought it to the masses. His debut single, the jittering grime bounce of I Love You, burst the teenager onto the national scene. Fizzing with his energetic yelp, it was what Simon Reynolds would later describe as Grime's Anarchy in the UK, and the scene would soon follow in Dizzee Rascal's 140 BPM sub-low footsteps. But how did this come about? This is New British Canon, and this is the story of I Love You. Dizzee Rascal was born Dylan Mills in 1984 and grew up in a tower block in the economically deprived East London neighbourhood of Bow. Within spitting distance of the late-stage capitalist paradise of Canary Wharf, Mills grew up acutely aware that there were limited means of getting out of his postcode of E3, even fewer that were legitimate. Separate from his friends, his early listening choices stemmed from reading Kerrang! Magazine, the likes of Nirvana, Iron Maiden and Guns N' Roses forming his adolescent mind, before later discovering jungle through his neighbour DJ Target. But soon the allure of the mic called to him. Adopting the moniker Dizzee Rascal, from the age of 15 he dove into rapping, practicing in his bedroom and throughout the local area's youth centres. He embraced the 16 and 32 bar flows of his friends, and collided it with the rapid-fire style of jungle MCs like General Evie. Incredible. Unlike a lot of British MCs at the time, Dizzee never tried to disguise that he was from London.
3 + 2 + 3 + 1. Ain't no fun. He came, he test, he got stopped.
I thought it would be heavy to sound English. I listen to a lot of US hip-hop, and I know that is how they talk in real life, but a lot of UK hip-hop doesn't do that. My influences are from jungle, and many of those artists still keep their English accent, and I respected that. At the time, the dominant sound on commercial radio stations like Kiss FM and in London's clubs was garage, an evolution of UK dance music, heavy on aspirational lyricism, sung vocals, and smooth R&B flavour. As it attained pop status, it had bloated itself on champagne and lost its connection with the streets. And what Dizzee and his fellow East London MCs were doing opposed garage's excesses. It was a bit more of a boushy thing, UK garage. Even though it started with real street persons, as it crossed over, it got a bit more fancy. A kid like me would have turned up in a hoodie and some trainers, and that's not what they wanted. They saw us as trouble, even though garage and drum and bass had its own trouble. We just looked like obvious trouble. Whereas with garage, the DJs and producers had been the focus. Certain collectives like So Solid Crew and Pay As You Go Cartel would bring the MC to the fore.
About the mic 21, after 21 seconds, my vocals done. 2 multiplied by 10 + 1, Romeo done.
And had been going darker and more aggressive with the sound. Instrumentals like Young Star's Pulse X. And Wiley from Pay As You Go's Eskimo. Were taking the bass lower, the synths colder, and the whole thing a lot grimier. It started niche but would gather followers. Early progress was made via London-based pirate radio stations like Deja Vu and Rinse FM, where hungry young MCs like DEE, Crazy Titch and Dizzee would battle for dominance with elastic flows and piercing wit, trading the mic every 16 bars. As he rapped in his spare time, the education system proved an issue for Dizzee, having been expelled from 3 schools for assorted misbehaviour. One teacher even had the audacity to call him a rascal, a verbiage he claimed for his own. His last chance was Langdon Park in Poplar, where he soon got excluded from all his classes, apart from music. Clearly Dizzy's passion, his teacher Tim Smith allowed him to just sit in the corner with music software Cubase and produce his own rudimentary tracks. He really believed in me. Then I realized fuck it, and I'd go to the back room every day because all I cared about was music. I kept making tunes. If you heard these tunes now, they're just advanced versions of the tunes that are still in the computer in school. By 2002, after finishing school and starting and dropping out of a college music course, he soon became a member of Wiley's new collective, Roll Deep. Dizzy can be heard supplying the hook and a verse on their track, Bounce.
Sounds of the Roll Deep crew, bounce. Eyes to the ladies crew, bounce. There's no time to waste, bounce. Let me see you show some pace, bounce.
In East London, people knew his voice, but he needed a calling card, a proper solo single, to raise him beyond neighborhood fame.
I love you. I love you.
A few months after his exit from college, Dizzee Rascal wrote I Love You at the South London studio of his soon-to-be producer and manager, Cage. A lot of Dizzy's time was spent sourcing some of the most abrasive sounds possible to implement into his rhythms, whether that be from drum machine chips, sound libraries, or even the PlayStation's Music 2000 software. I was always fucking about with some weird noise. All the samples were lined up on the keyboard. I never used a MIDI production center, so each key is a different sample. Those times I would usually start with the drums. I Love You, I definitely started with the drums and then built around it. The drums in question were the most industrial, fucked up sounding boom claps with no consideration for 4/4 time. Adjoined with the dirtiest synth bass Dizzy could get his hands on.
She's a bad girl on the bus though. It's Captain Roscoe with a crossbow. She got picked up, yo.
For all its shit-starting allure as the track that legitimized grime, I Love You only took Dizzy half an hour to create. For the track, Dizzy had been inspired by Dirty South hip-hop group 3-6 Mafia and associated act Hypnotized Camp Posse. Their tempos were more akin to the 140 BPM East London tempos that I was used to. But the idea of the cool response element of I Love You was taken from a couple of songs in particular. The actual structure of it was trying to emulate Is That Your Chick and What's Your Fantasy, those boy-girl call and response tracks that came out around the same time. I wrote the lyrics to Is That Your Chick.
Why you acting so funny? You know she been flirting while you working behind the curtain, knuckle jerking for certain, popping that pussy. Sweat to no blue with his left when I come in. Fake yo know where you say that's for. Some whore banging that you go, what for? Pregnant, what you talking about before?
I didn't have instrumentals. If you listen to the strings on I Love You,
You know, she keep calling my phone. She don't leave me alone. She just moan and groan. She keep ringing me at home. These days I don't answer my phone.
that was me trying to do the strings on What's Your Fantasy.
Lick you from your head to your toes, and I wanna move from the bed down to the floor, and I wanna.
I Love You opens with ominous synths and an increasingly robotic and cut up sample of its eponymous phrase.
I love you. I love you.
Strongly implying a looming nightmare. And in a way, it is. The song tackles an unexpected pregnancy.
If a girl know where you say that's for. Some whore banging that you go, what for? Pregnant, what you talking about before? 15, she's underage, that's raw.
And the anxiety, blame throwing, and denial involved.
Yo, some bitch, you know. She keep calling my phone. She don't leave me alone. She just moan and groan. She keep ringing me at home. These days I don't answer my phone.
Like a lot of Dizzy's verses, it was inspired by what he was seeing around him, documenting at eye level the kitchen sink grime of his neighborhood. Bare people were getting pregnant around me in the manor, get me? Bare girls were getting breeded up. I thought it was funny, because it could have happened to me. We joke about them mad things. What was revolutionary with the track wasn't so much what Dizzy was saying, but how he was saying it. As well as his oh-so-English accent, he was slotting in East London slang at a furious pace to create something almost impenetrable to those outside the niche.
Big feet full of fools on my big toe. I got no chaps, no chain, not much though. Get juice, but you don't get love though. No slap, but you might get a cocoa.
The female vocal was also interesting. Just as dismissive and done with their supposed paramour as Dizzy was.
That boy's some prick, you know. All up in my hair, thinks that I care. Following me here, following me there. These days I can't go nowhere.
Needing a female rapper but not knowing any, he persuaded a local girl called Janine Jacks to feature on the track, much to her initial hesitance and confusion. When she heard it, obviously she was like, what the fuck is this? No one had heard anything like that before. Imagine hearing that beat for the first time. I showed her the lyrics and how to say it, and she killed it. I Love You was initially released as a white label through Dizzy's own label, Dirty Stank, to Pirate Radio in the summer of 2002. While its relentless flow and abrasive sonics would take a while to get the East London scene on board, it became a calling card for the young MC, and labels started appearing, trying to sign him. After discussions with various majors that wanted him to sand down his edges, he was eventually snapped up by XL Recordings, home of The Prodigy and The White Stripes. I Love You was then officially issued by his new label in May 2003 and became one of the first proper grime tracks to reach the UK top 30. By this point though, Dizzy had recorded his debut album and was ready to take on the world. Boy in the Corner was released in July 2003, the same week while performing with Roll Deep Crew in Ayia Napa in Cyprus. Dizzy was stabbed 6 times. Rumours still surround the incident, and it seems to be the outcome of a scuffle between So Solid crew that Wiley may or may not have provoked. Nearly dying in the attack, Dizzy left the Roll Deep crew in the aftermath, sick of the small-minded infighting of the scene.
That's when I decided, you know what, all I want to do is music, fuck this. I saw how certain things went on the island with people that I thought I knew and just how it all went down. And I was like, nah, you know what, I'm just gonna do this, I'm gonna just make music, that is it, and just mind my own business and just keep it popping. Like.
A month later, Dizzy released Fix Up Look Sharp as a single. While I Love You was doing well on the pirate airwaves, it wasn't getting any love from national radio, and especially Tim Westwood and his BBC Radio 1 rap show. Fix Up Look Sharp was Dizzy's attempt to capture the DJ's ear with its old school hip hop beats and elastic flows.
Fix up, look sharp. Don't make me bring a blitz and get dark.
I remember someone said it on my estate when we were joking around. Fix up, look sharp. And it made me laugh on the spot, and it always stuck with me. Perhaps the most traditionally hip-hop song on Boy in the Corner, it utilizes Billy Squires' The Big Beat as its template. A beat that has been used by everyone.
DMC and DJ Run. Dum diddy dum diddy diddy dum dum. I got the rap patrol on the cat patrol. Foes that want to make sure my casket's closed.
Jared, could you read number 23 for the class?
No, I cannot. What up? I'm Jared, I'm 19, and I never fucking learned how to read.
Lyrically, it mixes comedic lines with references to ultra-violence, and features perhaps the line he will always be remembered for.
MCs down the loo. If you don't believe me, bring your posse, bring your crew.
Fix Up Look Sharp improved on I Love You's chart performance by reaching number 17 in the UK charts, and the album got to number 23. For what was an underground movement, heard by only the London-based few, Dizzee Rascal was pushing this grimy garage into the mainstream. Further proof of the 19-year-old's ascent was when Boy in the Corner won the Mercury Music Prize in September 2003, up against the likes of Radiohead and Coldplay. His win, the year after Miss Dynamite's win for A Little Deeper, furthered the idea that Britain had way more to offer than simply guitar music. Dizzy, though, was more than a bit confused by the award and what it meant.
I didn't know what it was supposed to be. Like, who watched the Mercury Awards in the hood? Come on, bro. Like, for real. We knew what the Mobos was, obviously. We know what the Brit Awards was, because Brit's the biggest thing in it. But the Mercury Awards, that's like a cool industry music thing. If you go back and watch the video, I was miffed. I don't know, I mean, I've won this thing, cool. And then I went home to the estate and passed it around and was confused. Basically, that's the truth, innit?
Despite Dizzy's confusion with his newfound critical acclaim, labels soon came for those making the same sub-low sounds as him. Lethal B from More Fire Crew was one of the first, snapped up by Virgin's Relentless imprint, home of garage mainstays So Solid Crew, Miss Dynamite and Artful Dodger. Through this deal, Lethal B managed an East London Sound number 11 hit single in July 2004 with Pow.
Pow! Yeah, I'm Lee for the beat. Pow! If you don't know about me, pow! Better ask someone quickly, cause pow! Yeah, I'm pow!
Wiley had already been signed to XL in a joint deal with Dizzy, and his What Do You Call It single pontificated on what the East London Sound should indeed be called.
What you call it, garage? What you call it, garage? What you call it, urban? What you call it, urban?
Wiley, in an act of self-aggrandizing, preferred Esky Beat, named after his influential instrumental Eskimo. But it wouldn't be long until grime became the de facto term. Soon artists from all across London like Kano, Tinchy Strider, Skepta, JME and Getz would follow on with this sound. By this point though, Dizzy had gone beyond grime, while his follow-up 2004's Showtime and parts of 2007's Maths Plus English were grime. By 2010, Dizzy was a pop star, now with 4 #1 singles, having played the Olympics opening ceremony, as well as collaborations with Calvin Harris, Robbie Williams, Shakira, and James Corden. He had truly broken out of his old neighborhood. Recently on Rasket and E3AF, he's gone back to his roots. But as an influence on the next generation, it all comes down to his debut, The Anarchy in the UK of Grime, a reaction against the state of UK garage that spawned its own genre in opposition. In 2020, with artists like Stormzy, AJ Tracy, and Dave breaking through further, grime is no longer of niche appeal. And it all started with those 3 magic words.
I love you.
Thanks for watching. What is your favourite classic grime track? Comment down below and don't forget to like, subscribe and click that bell. If you really liked it, check out my Patreon. I'd like to give a shout out to my new top tier patrons: Alex Anderson, Blake Atkinson, Karen, Alejandro Montoya, Chantal, Modius Modium, Justin Short, Paul Nelson, Luke O'Brien, Jensen Cochran, and Shanafi. Thanks a whole bunch, and I'll see you next time.